The raging waters of Blackwater Creek were unforgiving in the spring of 1874, especially to a young woman with nowhere else to turn. Olivia Farr stared at the churning waters, clutching her satchel to her chest, her decision already made. The distant sound of horses' hooves only strengthened her resolve. She would rather face the flood than the man who pursued her. Olivia had fled Copper Ridge 2 days prior, escaping a marriage arranged by her late father's business partner, Silas Thornton. At 30 years her senior, Thornton had waited precisely 3 days after her father's funeral to claim her hand and her father's silver mine as his own. Now, standing at the creek's edge in the cold Montana rain, Olivia knew there was no going back. The usual shallow crossing had transformed into a raging torrent after 3 days of spring storms. On normal days, the creek barely reached a rider's stirrups. Today, it roared like a living beast, carrying broken tree branches and debris from upstream. Olivia shivered, her blue calico dress already soaked through from the rain. The sound of distant riders grew louder. "Just cross quickly," she whispered to herself. 1 foot after another. She took a deep breath, secured her satchel diagonally across her body, and stepped into the icy water. The current immediately grabbed at her ankles, threatening to sweep her feet from under her. Olivia gasped but pressed forward, each step requiring all her strength. The water rose rapidly to her knees, her thighs, then her waist. Halfway across, a large branch rushed downstream, striking her hard. The impact knocked her off balance, and in an instant, the current had her. Olivia screamed as the frigid water closed over her head. She flailed desperately, managing to surface for a brief moment before being pulled under again. Her lungs burned as she struggled against the powerful current, her sodden dress now a deadly weight dragging her down. Through the roar of water in her ears, she heard a distant shout. Then another. Her head broke the surface just long enough to see a rider urging his horse into the creek. Her vision blurred as water filled her nose and mouth. She was being carried downstream now, tumbling and spinning in the current. Each time she managed to surface, she gasped desperately for air before being pulled under again. Just as her strength began to fail, strong arms wrapped around her waist, pulling her against something solid. She felt herself being lifted, the weight of the water giving way to the sensation of air against her skin. Olivia coughed violently as she was draped across the front of a saddle. "Hold tight, miss," a deep voice commanded as an arm secured her firmly. She clutched weakly at the saddle horn as the horse struggled against the current, gradually making its way to the opposite bank. When they finally reached solid ground, she was gently lowered to the grass. Olivia continued to cough, expelling creek water from her lungs as she lay shivering uncontrollably. "You're safe now," the man said, kneeling beside her and removing his duster to wrap around her trembling form. Through water-blurred eyes, Olivia finally saw her rescuer, a tall man with broad shoulders, sun-bronzed skin, and concerned hazel eyes beneath the brim of a worn brown hat. Raindrops clung to his dark beard, and his shirt was soaked through from the rescue. Thank you," she managed between coughs. "What in heaven's name were you doing crossing Blackwater during the spring flood?" he asked, his voice a mixture of concern and disbelief. "Another minute and you'd have been gone for good." Before she could answer, the sound of riders approaching from the direction she'd come made her stiffen with fear. The man noticed her reaction immediately, his hand moving instinctively to the revolver at his hip. "Those men," she whispered urgently. "They're looking for me." Without hesitation, he helped her to her feet and guided her toward his horse. "Then we'd best not be here when they arrive." He lifted her onto his horse, then swung up behind her. "Name's Ryan Anderson. You can explain once we're clear of whoever's got you running scared." Ryan urged the horse away from the creek, heading into a grove of cottonwoods that provided cover from the men on the opposite bank. Olivia glanced back once to see Thornton's men reaching the flooded crossing, clearly hesitant to attempt what she had barely survived. They rode for nearly an hour, the steady rain gradually lessening to a drizzle. Ryan's arm remained securely around her waist, his chest warm against her back despite their wet clothes. Eventually, they emerged from the trees into a small clearing where a modest cabin stood, smoke curling from its stone chimney. "My place," Ryan explained as he guided his horse toward the cabin. "Not much, but it's dry. My ranch hand Hector keeps the fire going when I'm out checking the herd." He helped her down from the horse, steadying her when her legs threatened to give way. Olivia was acutely aware of her bedraggled appearance, her once neat hair hanging in wet tangles, her blue dress muddy and torn. The cabin door opened, and an older Mexican man stepped out, his weathered face registering surprise at the sight of them. "Senor Ryan, what happened?" "Hector, this lady needs dry clothes and something hot to drink," Ryan said, guiding Olivia toward the door. "She nearly drowned in Blackwater Creek." "Dios mío," Hector muttered, hurrying back inside to prepare for their arrival. The cabin was simple but welcoming, a main room with a stone fireplace, wooden table with 4 chairs, and cooking area. A door led to what Olivia presumed was Ryan's bedroom. The warmth from the fire immediately began to ease her shivering. "Hector, can you fetch my sister's trunk from the storage room?" Ryan asked. "Miss Farr," Olivia supplied. "Olivia Farr," Ryan nodded. "Miss Farr needs dry clothes." "You have a sister?" Olivia asked, surprised. "Had," Ryan corrected gently. "Rebecca passed 2 winters ago from pneumonia. Some of her things are still here." "I'm sorry," Olivia said, genuine sympathy in her voice. Hector returned with a small trunk, setting it near the fire. "I will prepare coffee and stew," he said, discreetly moving to the cooking area to give them privacy. Ryan gestured toward his bedroom door. "You can change in there, Miss Farr. Take whatever fits from Rebecca's things." Olivia nodded gratefully and made her way to the bedroom, the trunk in her arms. Once alone, she allowed herself a moment of pure relief, closing her eyes and drawing a deep breath. The bedroom was neat and masculine, a simple bed with a handmade quilt, a chest of drawers, and a small table with a Bible and what looked like a journal. Opening the trunk, she found several dresses, simpler than what she was used to but clean and well made. She selected a brown wool dress that looked warm, along with necessary undergarments. As she changed, removing her ruined garments, she assessed her condition. Bruises were already forming where the branch had struck her, and various scrapes stung now that she was warming up. When she emerged from the bedroom in Rebecca's dress, which fit well enough though slightly loose in the bodice, she found Ryan had also changed into dry clothes. He stood by the fire, his wet hair combed back, revealing a small scar near his temple. "Feel better?" he asked, turning to face her. "Much. Thank you for your kindness, Mr. Anderson," she replied formally. "Ryan," he corrected. "And you'd best sit by the fire before you catch your death." He pulled out a chair for her, his manners surprisingly refined for a rancher. Olivia sat gratefully, extending her hands toward the fire's warmth. "I don't know how to repay you for saving my life. You can start by telling me why a young woman was trying to cross Blackwater Creek during the spring flood and who those men were." His tone was gentle but firm. Hector placed steaming cups of coffee before them, then retreated to the corner where he busied himself with preparing the evening meal, giving them as much privacy as the small cabin allowed. Olivia wrapped her hands around the warm cup. "My father was Joseph Farr." He owned the Silver Stream mine near Copper Ridge. Ryan's expression changed slightly. I've heard of it. Rich vein, as I recall. Yes. When he died 6 weeks ago, his business partner Silas Thornton claimed father had promised me to him in marriage along with his share of the mine. She swallowed hard. Father would never have done such a thing. Thornton is 30 years my senior and known for his cruelty. Ryan's jaw tightened. Silas Thornton. The man has a reputation that extends even out here. Then you understand why I ran. Olivia took a sip of the strong coffee. I have an aunt in Helena who might take me in, but Thornton's men were close behind. The creek was my only option. A desperate one, Ryan commented, his eyes studying her face. That was Thornton and his men at the creek. Olivia nodded. He won't give up easily. The mine produces enough silver to make him very determined to acquire it and me by whatever means necessary. Ryan considered this information, his expression serious. Helena's a good 4 days' ride from here, and that's in fair weather. With the spring floods, the usual trails will be washed out. I have to try, Olivia insisted. I'd rather die trying than become Thornton's wife. No one's dying, Ryan said firmly. We'll figure something out. He glanced outside where the rain had started again in earnest. But not tonight. You need rest. Tomorrow we'll decide on the best route to Helena. Hector brought over 2 bowls of fragrant stew. Eat, señorita. Food will bring strength back. Olivia hadn't realized how hungry she was until the aroma of the hearty stew reached her. She ate gratefully, occasionally glancing at her quiet host. Ryan Anderson was unlike any man she'd met in Copper Ridge. There was an air of self-sufficiency about him, a quiet confidence that didn't need to announce itself. How long have you had this ranch? She asked, breaking the comfortable silence. 5 years, Ryan replied. Came out from Pennsylvania after the war with what little I had. Started with 20 acres and 6 cattle. Now I've got 200 acres and nearly 100 head. You built all this yourself, Hector and I did. Ryan nodded toward his ranch hand. Found him half dead on the trail my first winter here. Some cowards had robbed him and left him for the wolves. Hector snorted from his place by the stove. And now he cannot get rid of me. The easy camaraderie between the 2 men was evident, and Olivia found herself smiling for the first time in weeks. What will you do in Helena? Ryan asked. The question sobered her immediately. My aunt runs a millinery shop. I'm handy with a needle, so I hope to work for her. She hesitated. Though I'm not certain she'll take me in. We haven't corresponded in years. Ryan nodded thoughtfully. It's a start. After the meal, Ryan insisted Olivia take his bed while he would sleep on a bedroll near the fire. Despite her protests, he was adamant, and exhaustion made her arguments weak. The events of the day caught up with her the moment her head touched the pillow, and she fell into a deep, dreamless sleep. Olivia woke to sunlight streaming through the small window and the scent of coffee and bacon. For a moment, she was disoriented. Then the events of the previous day came rushing back. She rose quickly, smoothing the borrowed dress as best she could, and using a brush she found on the dresser to tame her tangled hair. When she emerged from the bedroom, she found Ryan alone at the table, studying a map. Hector's out checking the north pasture, he explained without looking up. Coffee's hot. Thank you, she said, pouring herself a cup before joining him at the table. What are you looking at? Routes to Helena. Ryan traced a line with his finger. The main trail follows the river valley, but with the flooding, it'll be impassable for at least a week. A week? Olivia's heart sank. I can't impose on you for that long. There's another way, Ryan continued, ignoring her protest. Through Mitchell's Pass. It adds 2 days to the journey, but it's higher ground, less likely to be flooded. Olivia studied the map, noticing the narrow pass between 2 mountain ranges. It looks difficult. It is, Ryan admitted, but I know it well, drove cattle through there last fall. He finally looked up at her, his expression serious. The real problem isn't the route, Miss Farr, it's Thornton. Please call me Olivia, she said softly. Ryan nodded. Olivia, then. Men like Thornton don't give up easily. If he wants you in that mine badly enough, he'll keep searching. Even if we make it to Helena, what's to stop him from finding you there? The question hung in the air between them. Olivia had been so focused on escape that she hadn't considered the long-term implications. I don't know, she admitted. Perhaps my aunt could help me sell my share of the mine. Without proper documentation, that would be difficult, Ryan pointed out. And from what you've said, I doubt Thornton left you with any proof of ownership. Olivia's shoulders slumped. He was right. In her haste to escape, she'd taken only personal items and what little money she could find. All the mine documents were locked in her father's study, which Thornton now controlled. There must be a way, she said, determination returning to her voice. Father had friends in Helena, bankers, lawyers. Surely one of them would help establish my claim. Ryan studied her for a moment, respect evident in his gaze. You've got spirit, Olivia Farr. Your father would be proud. The simple statement brought unexpected tears to her eyes. She quickly blinked them away, focusing on her coffee. I'll help you get to Helena, Ryan said decisively. We'll leave tomorrow morning. Today we need to prepare. The journey won't be easy, especially with Thornton's men possibly searching for you. Why would you risk yourself for me? Olivia asked. You've already saved my life. You owe me nothing. Ryan was quiet for a moment. Let's just say I recognize Thornton's type, men who use power to take what isn't theirs. Something in his tone suggested personal experience. Besides, I can't in good conscience send you off alone. Throughout the day, they prepared for the journey. Ryan taught Olivia how to handle the small revolver he insisted she carry. Her hands trembled at first, but by the afternoon, she could hit the empty can he'd set up as a target. Not bad, he commented after her third successful shot. Just remember, aim lower than you think. Most folks shoot high when they're nervous. Hector returned mid-afternoon with concerning news. He'd spotted riders near the creek crossing, asking questions at the McDermott homestead about 3 miles east. Thornton's men, Olivia said with certainty, her stomach knotting with anxiety. Ryan's expression hardened. Then we leave tonight, not tomorrow, under cover of darkness. By dusk, they had packed provisions, bedrolls, and ammunition. Ryan insisted Olivia keep Rebecca's clothing, adding a sturdy coat and hat for protection against the elements. Hector would remain behind to tend the ranch, and if questioned, would claim Ryan had gone to deliver cattle to Fort Benton in the opposite direction from Helena. As they prepared to depart, Olivia found herself unexpectedly emotional about leaving the small cabin that had briefly sheltered her. I don't know how to thank you both, she said to Hector. The older man simply nodded. Return safely. Both of you. He gave Ryan a knowing look that Olivia couldn't quite interpret. They rode out under a clear sky filled with stars, the storm having moved east. Ryan led them north through dense pine forest, avoiding the main trails. Olivia, now dressed in men's trousers beneath her skirt for easier riding, followed closely on the mare Hector had prepared for her. We'll ride until midnight, Ryan explained in a low voice. There's an old trapper's cabin about 10 miles from here where we can rest. The night was cool but not uncomfortable, and the forest provided good cover. Olivia found herself studying Ryan straight back as he rode ahead, wondering about the man who had so readily come to her aid. There was a steadiness to him that she found profoundly reassuring. They reached the trapper's cabin shortly after midnight. It was little more than a one-room shelter with a stone fireplace, but it would keep them dry and hidden. We should avoid a fire, Ryan said as they unsaddled the horses. Smoke might be seen. Olivia nodded, though the thought of no fire meant a cold night ahead. They ate a simple meal of jerky and hardtack, washing it down with water from their canteens. Get some sleep, Ryan advised, spreading his bedroll on one side of the cabin. I'll keep watch for the first half of the night. I'm not sure I can sleep, Olivia admitted, settling onto her own bedroll. Every time I close my eyes, I feel like I'm back in that creek, the water pulling me under. Ryan's expression softened. That's natural after what you've been through. The mind needs time to accept that you survived. How do you know that? She asked. He was quiet for a moment. I served in the war. Some experiences stay with you. Olivia studied him in the dim moonlight filtering through the cabin's single window. Which side? Union. Pennsylvania, 148th Infantry, he replied. Fought from Chancellorsville to Appomattox. My father supported the Union cause, though Montana Territory was far from the fighting, Olivia said. He always said the war was about more than states' rights, it was about human dignity. Ryan nodded slowly. Your father sounds like a wise man. He was, Olivia said softly, although I'm beginning to think he wasn't as shrewd about business partners as he should have been. Even good men can misjudge character, Ryan observed. The important thing is that you recognize Thornton for what he is. They talked quietly for another hour, sharing pieces of their lives. Ryan spoke of his journey west after the war, seeking a new beginning far from the bloodshed he'd witnessed. Olivia told him about growing up in mining towns as her father pursued increasingly successful ventures. Eventually, exhaustion overcame her anxiety, and Olivia drifted to sleep with Ryan's reassuring presence nearby. She woke once in the night to find him placing his coat over her for extra warmth, his gesture causing an unexpected flutter in her chest. They were on the trail again before dawn, following game paths that wound through increasingly rugged terrain. By midday, they had reached the foothills that would lead them to Mitchell's Pass. The pass itself is narrow, Ryan explained as they stopped to rest the horses. Good for us because it's easier to defend if necessary, but also dangerous because there's only one way through. Do you think Thornton would have guessed this route? Olivia asked, scanning the hills anxiously. It's possible, Ryan admitted, but not likely. Most folks heading to Helena would take the River Valley route. Only locals know this pass is reliable year-round. They continued upward, the trail becoming steeper and rockier. Olivia's muscles ached from the unaccustomed riding, but she made no complaint. The alternative, falling into Thornton's hands, was far worse than any physical discomfort. As the sun began to set, they reached the entrance to the pass, a narrow gap between towering rock walls. We'll camp here tonight, Ryan decided, surveying the area. Good defensive position with clear lines of sight. They made a small, carefully shielded fire, both of them grateful for its warmth as the mountain air grew increasingly cold. Ryan prepared a more substantial meal, beans and salt pork heated in a small skillet he'd packed. Tell me about your plans, Olivia said as they ate. For your ranch? Ryan looked surprised by the question. Planning to expand eastward next year. There's good grazing land available for homesteading. Hope to double my herd in the next 3 years. It's a good life, isn't it? Building something of your own. It can be, he agreed, though lonely at times. Their eyes met briefly across the small fire, and Olivia felt a strange connection, as though they shared an understanding that went beyond words. What about you? Ryan asked. If you successfully claim your share of the mine, what then? Olivia considered the question. I hadn't thought beyond escaping Thornton. I suppose I could sell my share and start fresh somewhere. Like where? I don't know, she admitted. Somewhere I could be useful, independent. Ryan added another small branch to the fire. Independence is hard won out here, especially for a woman alone. I'm learning that, Olivia said with a rueful smile. They fell into comfortable silence, each lost in their own thoughts as night fully descended. When it came time to sleep, Ryan insisted on taking the first watch again. You need the rest more than I do, he said firmly when she protested. This time, Olivia fell asleep quickly, lulled by the crackling fire and the now familiar sense of security she felt in Ryan's presence. She dreamed of water and struggled briefly in her sleep until a gentle hand on her shoulder brought her back to consciousness. Just a dream, Ryan said softly, his face close to hers in the firelight. You're safe. Half awake, Olivia reached up and touched his bearded cheek. Thank you for finding me, she whispered. For a moment, neither moved. Then Ryan carefully tucked her blanket around her shoulders and returned to his position by the fire. Olivia watched him through half-closed eyes, a new emotion stirring within her, one she wasn't yet ready to name. The morning brought clear skies and the most challenging part of their journey, traversing Mitchell's Pass itself. The trail narrowed to barely the width of a horse in some places, with steep drops on one side and sheer rock face on the other. Stay close, Ryan cautioned as they entered the pass. Watch where I go and follow exactly. For 3 hours they picked their way through the pass, leading the horses through the most treacherous sections. Halfway through, they paused to rest in a small clearing where a spring provided fresh water. The worst is behind us, Ryan assured her. Another hour and we'll be through the pass. Then it's easier terrain to Helena. Olivia nodded, taking a long drink from the spring. You navigate this as though you were born to it. Ryan smiled slightly. Hardly. First time I came through here, I was so terrified I could barely breathe. Just didn't let anyone see it. His admission surprised her. You, afraid? Everyone feels fear, Olivia. Courage isn't about not being afraid, it's about doing what needs doing despite the fear. He glanced at her. Like crossing a flooded creek when there's no other choice. His words warmed her more than she expected. Before she could respond, the sharp crack of a rifle shot echoed through the pass, and rock splinters flew from the cliff face inches from Ryan's head. Down, he shouted, pulling Olivia behind a large boulder as another shot rang out. Heart pounding, Olivia pressed herself against the rock. Thornton, Ryan carefully peered around the edge of the boulder. 3 riders at the south entrance, one with a rifle. He drew his revolver. They must have followed our trail. What do we do? Olivia whispered, fear threatening to overwhelm her. Ryan's expression was grim. We're pinned down, can't go back, and they're blocking the way forward. Another shot struck their protective boulder, sending more stone fragments flying. The horses, Olivia suddenly said. If they spook and run forward. Ryan caught her meaning immediately. It might draw their fire, create a distraction. He nodded appreciatively. Good thinking. Keeping low, Ryan crept to where their horses were tethered, speaking softly to calm them after the gunfire. He loosened their reins, then gave a sharp slap to the mare's rump. Both horses bolted forward, galloping toward the pass entrance where Thornton's men waited. As predicted, the sudden movement drew fire from the riflemen. Ryan used the distraction to edge around the boulder, his revolver ready. Stay here, he ordered Olivia. If I don't make it back, follow the pass to the northern exit, then east to Helena. Ryan, no, she began, but he was already moving, staying low and using the rocky terrain for cover. Olivia watched in terror as Ryan worked his way forward, disappearing from her sight. More shots rang out, followed by the distinctive sound of Ryan's revolver returning fire. Then silence. The seconds stretched into minutes. Olivia clutched Ryan's spare revolver, her hands trembling. Had he been shot? Should she try to follow him or stay hidden as instructed? Just as she'd gathered the courage to move, Ryan appeared around the bend in the pass, leading both horses. Blood stained his left shirt sleeve. "Ryan," she cried, rushing to him. "You're hurt." "Just a graze," he said grimly. "Thornton was there himself with 2 hired guns. They've retreated for now, but they'll be back with more men." "You faced Thornton." Olivia felt a chill at how close Ryan had come to death because of her. Got a glimpse. Fancy city clothes, big mustache. When she nodded confirmation, Ryan continued. "He ordered his men to take you alive, but said I was expendable." "We need to keep moving," Olivia urged, examining his wounded arm. The bullet had torn through the flesh of his upper arm, leaving an angry furrow that bled steadily but wasn't life-threatening. She quickly tore a strip from her petticoat and bound the wound as best she could. Ryan watched her work, his expression unreadable. "Why are you risking your life for me?" she asked softly as she tied off the bandage. "You barely know me." Ryan was quiet for a moment. "I know enough," he finally said. "I know you're brave and resourceful. I know you deserve better than being forced into marriage with a man like Thornton." Their eyes met, and something passed between them, an understanding that transcended their brief acquaintance. "We need to move," Ryan said, breaking the moment. "They'll regroup and try to circle around." They mounted quickly and continued through the pass at a faster pace, the imminent threat overriding caution. By late afternoon, they emerged from the northern end of the pass onto a grassy plateau that offered sweeping views of the valley below. "We'll avoid the main trail to Helena," Ryan decided. "Take the old hunting paths instead. Harder going, but less chance of Thornton setting an ambush." They rode until dusk, pushing themselves and the horses hard. When they finally stopped to make camp in a sheltered ravine, both were exhausted. Olivia insisted on properly cleaning and rebandaging Ryan's wound before they ate. "It needs stitches," she said worriedly, examining the injury in the firelight. "It'll hold until Helena," Ryan assured her. "I've had worse." Olivia frowned but didn't argue. Instead, she applied the herbal salve Hector had packed and wrapped the wound with clean bandages from their supplies. "You have gentle hands," Ryan observed as she worked. Olivia felt heat rise to her cheeks at the compliment. "My mother taught me basic nursing before she passed. Said a woman should know how to tend wounds in mining country." "She was right," Ryan said, "though I hope you don't have much opportunity to practice." Their evening meal was subdued, both aware of how close they'd come to disaster in the pass. When they'd finished eating, Ryan spread out his map. "We're about 2 days from Helena now," he explained, "if we keep a good pace and avoid trouble." "And when we reach Helena?" Olivia asked, the question that had been building inside her finally emerging. "What then?" Ryan looked up from the map, his expression serious. "I help you find your aunt. Make sure you're settled safely. And then you return to your ranch," Olivia said, trying to keep disappointment from her voice. "That was the plan," Ryan agreed, though something in his tone suggested uncertainty. They sat in silence for several minutes, the crackling fire the only sound between them. "I don't want to put you in more danger," Olivia finally said. "You've already risked too much for me." "The decision was mine," Ryan replied firmly, "and I'd make the same choice again." The simple sincerity in his voice touched something deep within Olivia. Without thinking, she reached across and placed her hand over his. "Why?" Ryan turned his hand to clasp hers, his calloused fingers warm against her skin. "Because from the moment I pulled you from that creek, something changed. I don't have fancy words for it, Olivia." "You don't need fancy words," she whispered, her heart beating faster. He moved closer, his eyes never leaving hers. "I've lived alone a long time, thought that was my path. But these past days with you," he hesitated. I find myself wanting a different future. What kind of future? Olivia asked, barely daring to hope. One where I don't have to say goodbye to you and Helena, Ryan said simply. One where we face whatever comes next together. Olivia felt tears welling in her eyes. I've only known you for 3 days. How can I feel this way? Some things don't need time, Ryan said softly. Sometimes you just know. When he leaned forward and kissed her, it felt like coming home after a long journey. His lips were gentle against hers, asking rather than demanding. Olivia responded with a certainty that surprised her hands moving to frame his face. When they finally parted, Ryan rested his forehead against hers. Whatever happens in Helena, I want you to know you have choices. You don't have to face Thornton alone. I'm beginning to believe that, she whispered. They reached Helena 2 days later without further incident, though they remained vigilant for any sign of Thornton or his men. The territorial capital was larger and more developed than Olivia had expected, with brick buildings lining the main street and the constant activity of a growing frontier town. Olivia's Aunt Margaret Farr owned a millinery shop on Last Chance Gulch, the main thoroughfare named for the gold strike that had established the town. When they entered the shop, a bell above the door announced their arrival. A slender woman with graying auburn hair looked up from a counter where she was arranging ribbons. Recognition dawned slowly on her face. Olivia, Joseph's girl. Hello, Aunt Margaret, Olivia said tentatively. What followed was a tearful reunion as Margaret embraced her niece. When I heard about Joseph's passing, I wrote to you but never received a reply. Thornton must have intercepted your letter, Olivia explained. She introduced Ryan, careful to describe him as the man who had saved her life, though the way Margaret's eyes moved between them suggested she sensed there was more to the story. Over tea in Margaret's living quarters behind the shop, Olivia recounted everything that had happened since her father's death. Margaret's expression grew increasingly troubled. That scoundrel Thornton, she said angrily. Joseph always said he was too smooth by half. I never imagined he'd go this far. The problem remains, Ryan pointed out. Without documentation, proving Olivia's claim to the mine will be difficult. Margaret's eyes narrowed thoughtfully. Perhaps not. Joseph sent me papers for safekeeping last year, his will and mine ownership documents. Said he didn't trust his safe after someone tried to break into it. Olivia's heart leaped. You have father's will. Indeed I do, Margaret confirmed. And if I recall correctly, he left everything to you, with specific instructions that his business partnerships would terminate upon his death unless you chose to renew them. For the first time since her father's death, Olivia felt a surge of hope. That would mean Thornton has no claim at all. None whatsoever, Margaret agreed, though that may not stop him from trying. Ryan, who had been quiet during this exchange, spoke up. The law is on Olivia's side now. With proper documentation and witnesses to the will, Thornton's claims won't stand up in court. You'll stay with me, of course, Margaret told Olivia. For as long as needed, she glanced at Ryan. And your friend is welcome as well. Thank you, madam, Ryan replied politely. But I should find a room at the hotel. Don't want to impose. Margaret gave him a knowing look but didn't argue. At least stay for dinner. After what you've done for my niece, it's the least I can offer. Later, as the sun began to set over the distant mountains, Olivia and Ryan stood outside Margaret's shop, the moment of parting upon them. What will you do now? Ryan asked. With your rightful claim to the mine established, Olivia considered the question. I think I'll sell my share, start fresh somewhere. She looked up at him. What about you? Will you return to your ranch eventually? Ryan said, but I thought I might stay in Helena a while. Make sure Thornton doesn't cause more trouble. Is that the only reason? Olivia asked softly. Ryan smiled, taking her hands in his. No, there's a woman here I've grown rather fond of. Thought I might see if she'd consider having dinner with me tomorrow night. Olivia's heart soared. I think she'd like that very much. And perhaps, Ryan continued, his voice growing more serious, if things continue as they have between us, she might consider visiting a certain ranch, see if she likes the place. She might, Olivia replied, her voice barely above a whisper. Though I suspect it's not the place that matters to her, but the man who built it. Ryan drew her closer, unconcerned with the curious glances of passers-by. Olivia Farr, when I pulled you from that creek and said you were safe, I had no idea how you'd change my life. For the better, I hope, she said, smiling up at him. In every way, he assured her before lowering his lips to hers once more. In the weeks that followed, Thornton made one final attempt to claim the Silver Stream mine, filing a lawsuit that was quickly dismissed when Margaret produced Joseph Farr's properly witnessed will. Faced with potential charges of fraud and harassment, Thornton retreated to California, leaving Olivia free to sell her share of the mine to a mining corporation for a sum that ensured her financial independence. Ryan remained in Helena throughout the legal proceedings, his steady presence a constant reminder that she was no longer alone. Their courtship progressed with a natural ease that belied the dramatic circumstances of their first meeting. By summer's end, when the wildflowers covered the Montana hills in a riot of color, Olivia accepted Ryan's proposal beneath the same cottonwood trees where he had first brought her after rescuing her from the flooded creek. They were married in Margaret's parlor that autumn, with Hector serving as Ryan's best man. After the ceremony, as they prepared to depart for the ranch that would now be their shared home, Ryan leaned down to whisper in his new wife's ear. "You're safe now," he said, echoing the words he'd spoken when he pulled her from the raging waters. "And always will be, as long as I draw breath." Olivia smiled up at her husband, knowing that with him she had found not just safety, but a love as vast and enduring as the Montana sky above them.